All right. Well, hey, everybody. This is Alabama Government Advocacy Day 2025. We're doing this via Zoom on March 11th. My name is Andrew Colson. I serve as the Director of Undergraduate Admissions. I am also joined by Samantha Krietemeyer. Sorry, and my slides are not advancing here. From the Houston Academy down in Dothan. It is in Dothan, right?
It is,
Like,
it's in
not
Dothan.
Okay, gotcha. I didn't know if it was like a suburb or anything like that. Okay, awesome. Well, we're really glad to have you guys join us virtually or in the recording today. So, kind of a little overview about our agenda today. So, we just wanted to start out quickly with introductions for myself and Samantha. We'll kind of go into a little bit more in depth as well too, just on the leadership of government relations as it pertains to Alabama as well as our SACAC chairs. But also today we're going to go over a little bit more about NACAC policy updates. That's kind of establishing NACAC's role in government advocacy in case you're new to this role, and how that also informs SACAT's role in government advocacy and kind of just the parameters we put on those two organizations and ourselves as professionals. And then also a little bit more about things that are currently happening on the federal level as well as the state level. And then we will kind of just go on from there as well too, since this will be a recording. Now, a quick overview about what government relations is, just defined by NACAC. This is a committee that is responsible for monitoring, federal and state legislation and legislative initiatives pertinent to college admissions and primary and secondary school counseling. And so our job is basically to inform you all as constituents, as members of SACAC, of any of these bodies that educate students in our states, of issues of concern that are going to be affecting you and your job as professionals, as well as your students as learners and future professionals as well too on the state and national level. And so NACAC themselves do provide resources to help members connect with legislators and learn of pending legislation. If you have never visited NACAC before, or, you've never gone to a conference, our main contact for NACAC is Mr. David Hopkins. When it comes to government advocacy, he is always super great, super knowledgeable, and has a bevy of resources on the NACAC website on how to actually reach your senators, your legislators on the federal side, the state level side as well too. And it also has a bevy of things that are NACAC are currently working on as an organization to advocate for things that are going on the national level. So our main duties is, like I said, as SACAT members, pretty much the exact same thing. So we try to keep you guys informed about everything that affects our membership in the state of Alabama. We try to provide a space for education, discussion, and advocacy for policies that benefit our students and members. One of those key things is discussion. I think one of the big things that people often think of as government advocacy is they might think that there's an agenda here for any kind of specific political leaning. Our agenda is more focused on what is going to be best for the students and best for our profession, and more so than anything else, that is often determined by our membership. And so this is a democratic body. We do like to base our discussions on actual discussion and good faith discussion as well too. And then we also like to enact these legislative days. So in the past, we've done legislative days. We were actually at the Capitol and we go to attend a Senate or House meeting. And then sometimes we do these virtual events, just kind of depending on how the dice roll. And since this is a volunteering capacity too, how our leadership can, accommodate their own schedules to meet the needs of our fellow individuals. Typically, we also do these legislative days on Tuesdays because that is usually when the legislature meets. So it's just a little bit timely, keeps it within the government idea. And Tuesdays are always voting days too. So, it just kind of keeps with that feeling of being all governmenty. As I mentioned before, we do have government relations committee. And so Samantha, I've talked a little bit too much here. So if you could just tell us kind of how long you've been with a member of SACAC, maybe some of your involvement, as well as, why you're part of government relations.
Hey, yes, thank you so much for watching this video and for being interested in government relations. This is my fourth year as a member of SACAC, and as Andrew said, I'm coming from Houston Academy in Dothan, Alabama. It's a 3P through 12th grade private secondary school. And I think we are all impacted by government relations, whether or not we're actively involved in hearing about the different legislation that is up for discussion or that is being passed. Last year, I happened to see an email with information about NACAC Government Relations Advocacy Day at the Hill, and I was fortunate enough to be selected to attend, and that was the best experience that I've been able to have through SACAC and through NACAC. So I was able to go and sort of learn more about NACAC's initiatives. And again, as Andrew said, it is all student centered and it is not all necessarily politically leaning, as he said, but I think a lot of it does have to do with from the education perspective and from professionals in the field and seeing like what is actually happening when these bills pass. And so I had the opportunity to talk to different representatives and different people in the Capitol, and that was a wonderful opportunity to sort of hear their perspective and hear the questions that they asked and how we can sort of more target our feelings about the education field and make sure that they are represented in these different spaces. So that's to me what this committee is about, is making sure that like our voices are heard and that our students are advocated for.
Yeah, absolutely. And kind of to Samantha's point too, I mean, why I joined SACAC, this is my fifth year as part of this committee on the state level. And so I've been in this a little bit longer than is typical of this co-chair position. That's just because I think it is important. And we are constantly looking for people to join us. So Samantha's been with us in this official capacity just for about what, like 2 months, 3 months, something like that.
Yeah, not long.
Yeah, I was about to say just about the turn of the year. And so we are always looking for those members. I think one of the best things about an organization like SACAC is that it does bring people from all over our region and can help us provide resources and just knowledge on things that have worked. So one of the big things that I've relied on in my work with government relations is kind of using our other states contiguous to Alabama, as well as, just throughout SACAC as examples of what they've done to promote, just knowledge in their member base, but also what they've actually done to reach out to legislators to promote the priorities of our membership as well too. And so that's been one of the most edifying parts of it. So if nothing else, if you're just looking for something to help better network with individuals who are, like you, are going to be kind of mission driven, there I think is no better committee to be involved with. And obviously I'm very biased on this. No better committee in SACAT to be involved with in government relations. So if you are interested, I'd highly suggest being part of this. These co-chair positions, they're, official in name, but we are constantly looking for people to take on leadership roles or volunteering roles, and we'd love to have you join us as well too. Um, who's not with us today just due to their jobs as our co-chairs for SACAC board for government relations, and that's Kelly Pitkavich and Anna Peel. Kelly is coming from Tennessee, and she has been in this role. This is her third year as well too, and so she will actually be rolling off after this year from the board. And then we have Anna Peel, who is just in her first year coming from the new school in Georgia, and so really just big shout out to them. They've been incredibly helpful. I've known Kelly basically my entire time in higher education for the past 8 years, and so she's been our primary contact. And then Anna also is just a wealth of knowledge as well too, and both are just incredible leaders in this work role too. And they're also great points of contact in case you are looking to get more involved with SACAC as well too. Now I talked a lot about getting involved with SACAC. So how do you actually do that? Well, first of all, if you're not a member of SACAC, that would be your starting point. And so SACAC does have various committees that are open to members. And so as long as you're a member, you can volunteer, you can apply for certain leadership positions or even board positions. And we really do not have a preference for representation. This is not a university only, community college only, secondary education level only organization. SACAC strives to have as great of a representation as possible, as a diverse and inclusive representation as possible in our leadership positions and our membership positions. for all levels and for all schools. So whether it be public education, private education, university level, college level, secondary, high school level, we want you to be part of this program. One thing I was really excited about is that in my time in Alabama government relations, I haven't had someone as a co-chair who was on the secondary side. So Samantha joining has been a great, just kind of eye-opening experience for me since I am so zeroed in on the university side. So I really appreciate her being part of that. Or part of this rather, and I really appreciate all of our membership just doing a good job of trying to integrate people from all over. So don't think that you have to be a certain member of a certain institution type. This is an open opportunity for anybody who falls within the SACAC region. And so, like I said, one of the best ways to start is just volunteering. Just whether it be through going to a session at SACAC or being a session monitor at SACAC, just keeping time for the presenter, presenting, and then, of course, going to these different meetings. We love for people when they attend a meeting to reach back out and see if they might be interested in joining us on any of these committees. So government relations works a lot with state and area initiatives, which focus on a lot of those drive-ins, those council workshops, things like that. But if you're thinking more on the lines of things that are related to member relations or inclusion and access and success, finance, professional development, government, and nominating, those are all great committees as well too. I also serve on our government and nominating board as well too. So if you really like reading applications, that is a great thing to do, and you can also be part of the decision-making arm for leadership at SACAC as well. So that's a lot of fun. So all those forms can be found at sacac.org. And like I said, main benefit of this is networking with individual members. So definitely encourage you to do that. Now, one of the things we wanted to kind of cover today is NACAC updates. So David unfortunately could not meet us today. He had a prior meeting, and so we wanted to provide his input based on what he told us as far as federal updates, as well as just a quick overview about NACAC's policy overview. I'm not going to spend too much time on this because I've already covered it basically. But just as a reminder, NACAC is a nonpartisan organization. They are here to advocate on behalf of our students as well as the professionals who serve students on the secondary and post-secondary level. And that's on the private and public level as well too. So NACAC's core values are promoting education, promoting access and equity, not only for our students, but also for professionals and getting into the field of higher education, professionalism between our membership, collegiality, especially as it relates to interpersonal relationships between our members and students, and also between our members and government officials, trust, and social responsibility as an organization. Where we lead are going to be on those things that pertain to student and equity-centered admissions practices. So making sure that admissions practices across the board are emphasized to promote those equitable practices as legally prescribed, and also just on best practices when it comes to doing what is best for our students and the populations that we serve. This would also be professional responsibility and ethics for college admissions counseling professionals. So that would be both on the secondary and post-secondary side, just making sure we are doing everything in our power to make sure students are getting to where they need to go in a, once again, legal and ethical way. And the expansion of capacity and impact of school counselors and college advisors. So that is really making sure that our membership can do their jobs. So whether it be advocating for decreases in counselor to student ratios, that way our counselors can have more room to breathe and more opportunities to serve the students they actually serve, or maybe that's also increasing access to SACAC membership. So a few years ago, SACAC and NACAC opened up to where public educators would be able to join for free, so those organizations. And so that's one of those big things that we try to continue to expand the reach of NACAC and SACAC and those opportunities to diversify and make sure all parties are at the table, not just the university side as well too. So some of those things that NACAC supports is going to be things like college affordability, student protections against fraud and abuse, the DACA/DREAM Act, and just kind of international and certain immigration statuses, easy transition into higher education, global student mobility, and transfer pathways. And so these are all kind of topics that are at the forefront, if not of your, state or, your local community. It's definitely part of, the national conversation as well too. And so one of the things that I know UAB is really focused on is the transfer pathways, especially too as we are looking at ways to make things a little bit more accessible for transfer students. But these are all things that NACAC is focused on to make sure that our membership can feel empowered to really make things more accessible for their students. Some things that David wanted us to kind of focus on as they pertain to just some things happening in the world of executive actions. I do have a slide both on executive actions as well as legislative and regulatory actions or policy proposals that are currently in the zeitgeist. As y'all are aware, none of this should really be news in case you don't turn on the news maybe every week. These are pretty commonly on those news tickers. So there has been an announced ban on DEI programs in the federal government, requesting additional anti-DEI and anti-LGBTQ plus measures from agencies, a mandate for identifying just two genders in federal government operations, and requesting that the Department of Ed develop proposals to ban recipients of federal funds from DEI programming, directive to enforce FFA decisions. Basically, there's a lot of focus on kind of these DEI measures, as we're all aware of. This has actually been something that's been in process for the past couple of years here on a state level in many cases, that has then, kind of ballooned into more of a national conversation as we've transitioned to a new presidency. One thing to kind of keep in mind too is that like I said before, NACAC does advocate for equity and inclusion. Obviously, these are concerns for the organization and our membership as a whole, just from NACAC's perspective and NACAC's values. School choice provide requests that Ed provide recommendations for school choice legislation. That's a little bit more on the state side on how that's decided. And so every single state has different kind of school choice options. Here in Alabama, for example, it's just been within the last couple of years here, we've had a little bit more of a setup on school choice vouchers and students being able to make those decisions, as well as an expansion of charter school operations in the state, especially in some of the metro areas as well too. Executive order on K-12 instruction bans teachings of subjects like critical race theory in K-12 public schools, calls for patriotic curricula. We've seen a lot of those national stories in places like Texas and Florida, where a lot of those have started. But we have legislation like that here in the state of Alabama as well, too, to kind of follow along a lot of those executive orders. And then one of the things that caused a lot of anxiety this year was a FAFSA freeze. So funding freeze specifically for things like NIH funding, which affects a lot of the research done at universities, as well as the initial scare of what could have been a full freeze on any kind of national grant. As was then clarified back in January, this does not affect federal aid for students, but it is one of those things that has caused a lot of anxiety of the student body, especially going into college for the first time. And of course, one of the biggest things too is immigration enforcement in schools and on campuses. In case you've seen those videos of ICE raids in public places or as places of work, they're also happening in schools. Many schools I know here locally, at least, have had a lot of meetings on what to do if that ever does happen to protect their students. That's definitely one of those things that NACAC has kept their eye on as well too, just in regards to how it aligns with our core values, or rather does not align. Some other things to kind of keep in mind too are legislative and regulatory actions on the federal level. Obviously, there's been talks about legislation introduced to eliminate the Department of Education, to eliminate any department on the federal government that does require action from the Senate and House in order to vote on it. It's not necessarily something that an executive order can do, but it is something that is in consideration by certain House members as well. The department also eliminated non-binary gender options from the FAFSA form, and so that has, been a topic of conversation as well too, very akin to those executive orders, kind of a national conversation. I think one of the positives, especially from this past year, has been some changes to the FAFSA to kind of make sure that a delay like last year doesn't happen again. One of those being a comment period for the FAFSA, but also being that opportunity for our uh, uh, Department of Education to identify that, yes, they will have the FAFSA open on October 1st, months beforehand. And if they cannot do that, they are required to then go in front of Senate House Committee in order to explain why and provide kind of more insight to the public in a more timely fashion. I think that is a positive just because we've had a lot of changes and that's caused a lot of issues for students, especially those who need federal aid in order to move on to that next level of schooling. And so I think that is something that fits along more with those NACAC values and not necessarily something I completely listed here as well too. And then we have a lot of things that are anticipated legislation kind of going forward. So some of those things have been thrown out, have been deregulation of for-profit college sector, kind of a reverse of what's, happened over the last decade or so here. Reduction of education funding for all programs, more anti-DEI provisions, kind of on top of what has already been proposed and enacted. Tax provisions targeting higher ed institutions, and then, of course, school vouchers for K-12 education on the federal level. And so these are just all things that NACAC's kind of keeping an eye on. One of the things I really suggest doing if you're not getting NACAC updates, you can sign up for their newsletter. They do send out, I think it's roughly every week or every 2 weeks, an update on government relations, and it's really informative, especially if you're like me, and if you check a news app or a news website, you might be there for hours upon hours. So it's better to have it fed to you in a concise place, maybe on the weekly. That can really help my personal anxiety as well too. So that's one of those things that I definitely suggest if you haven't done, sign up for their newsletter. One last thing too, if you ever want to get more information, or maybe you're interested in joining a NACAC committee, government relations, like I said, is David Hawkins' baby at the NACAC level. And so that is his contact information. NACACnet.org is the website as well too. So would be happy to connect you with him as well too. So definitely reach out. The other thing we wanted to cover today too was Alabama policy proposals. So I'm not going to go over all of these because it is a lot, but I did want to kind of inform you guys. So if you're anything like me, like I said, I like having things in a nice, concise place to look at them. I don't have an official diagnosis as ADHD, but I think just as any millennial who's been on their phone for way too long, my attention span has definitely run very, very low. So it is nice to have somewhere where I can go to one place to get all my information at once rather than hopping between tabs, because once out of sight, out of mind. And so, in case you're not familiar, there is a website called Legiscan, or Legiscan, I should say, which basically takes into account all currently proposed, in process, as well as past legislation on the state, federal level for any state. And that is the easiest place I go to make sure that I can read the bills that are actually put forward by the state and also see where they are in the process. And so Legiscan has breakdowns on what committee they're being pushed through, what type of bill is being passed, if it's more of a local bill or something that more akin to a state level effect, as well as if it's a House or Senate bill. And so I actually already have these pulled up, so that way it's a little more seamless here. But Legiscan, like I said, has these breakdowns right here for House bills as well as Senate bills. This is a really good tool to utilize to make sure you're in the know. One of the big things I really suggest to our membership is, just trying to keep yourself aware of what's happening. Don't always rely on just, getting those news updates, like I mentioned beforehand too, but taking some time to do your own research. If this is something really important to you and especially important to your students, you do want to make sure that you're keeping up with this, especially it's also if it's something that maybe would affect negatively or positively your students and your job. And so right now, some of those big things that are happening in Alabama House, a lot of these bills that I mentioned or executive actions that have been proposed are very much akin to what is being proposed on the state level. So some of those things that have been introduced this past year, just kind of a quick little overview by the House, are going to be things like completion of a approved computer science course. And so this is more so kind of focused on this would by the way, this is HB 332. This would focus on kind of providing a media literacy, rather social media literacy and uh, 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 virtual security course to students just to provide them a better idea of how to stay safe on the internet. As we know, it's become prevalent in our lives here every single year, a little bit more and more. So it is important for us to have obviously some parameters and some guidance on how students can keep safe on the internet as well too. You have a couple of other things on here as well, kind of that have been a little bit more in the zeitgeist as well. So those would be things like the cell phone use policy, those things, which, there's a lot of these that are kind of repeats as well too. Also, one of the big things that I think has been kind of a point of contention has been the public and non-public K-12 schools being prohibited from using transfer student records, refusing transfer student records based on unpaid balances. This is something that is common practice on both secondary and post-secondary levels. This is something that is being proposed just on the secondary level as a potential prohibition for schools to practice, which can be, depending on where you're coming from, a point of contention. And then a lot of these would be based on those gender identity or anti-DEI initiatives as well too. Over on the Senate side, you also have, like I said, some of these are very similar to what's been proposed in the House. So Star Spangled Banner required weekly or daily, depending on which one you're looking at. Teacher certification for certain types of initiatives or certain types of subjects being taught. And then also some of these things as related to, like I said, those national or rather cybersecurity education programs as well too. And like I said, these are currently the ones that have been introduced. Typically, the Senate window is in spring, depending on the election year. So, in most cases, Senate does start session in fall, unless it falls. I think it's every 4 years. It will start in March, usually on the first week of March. And so, right now, a lot of the Senate is in session. So, I really do encourage you to take time to look at this, and not just these that affect, our main, focus here on education in the state of Alabama. One of those things I would also suggest is just, if there's anything that affects you on the local level, on the personal level, reach out to your representative. One of the things that I would really suggest doing, in case you haven't already done it, I usually just type in, representative contact information, and house.gov has a find your representative, congress.gov has your federal level, and then USA.gov can help you find all of your representatives on basically every single level, so state level, national level as well too. So this is one of those things where it's just one of those things where you don't necessarily think about all the time. I know personally for me, once again, as being a millennial, it's one of those where just calling someone scares the crap out of me, quite frankly, which is ironic since I'm in a job which requires a lot of communication. But it's one of those things that I think is incredibly important, and one of those things that we really want to try to emphasize. You are not alone in this journey. So if you ever want to reach out to talk a little bit more about maybe coordinating advocacy about an issue that affects all of us, or you think there's a certain type of bill that's being introduced that could be really helpful and might need a little bit more of a cosign, a little bit more support from the public, be yeah, as far as being able to provide insight on how to best advocate for those policies that can really help your students, that's going to be incredibly important for us as well too, as a committee as well. Samantha, is there anything else that you'd like to add as far as like just kind of things going on in Alabama, or just kind of final notes for us as we close out the video today?
No, I think just to reiterate, so some of the bills that have been proposed are things that, like in discussions before today, or before this recording, Andrew and I realized that it's totally different perspectives depending on which side of the desk you're on, but that
Yeah.
doesn't mean that you're alone in the conversation. And so I think, again, considering the student, considering the core mission, I think, of our roles and through SACAC, there is an opportunity to get involved and to to be reflective, I think, and it's really helpful to be recentered in conversations like this.
Yes.
Yeah, so I've enjoyed learning about all the different opportunities and the different ways that we can get involved and can really be advocates and be the type people that we hope to be.
Absolutely. Well, so like I said, since we have a pretty small crowd here today, we would have done a group discussion, but for the good of the video, I'm just going to put it to you, the viewer. What issue is important to you? What issue is important to your students? We sent out a form to kind of get impact or not impact, get input from our membership on what we can do to better advocate, better coordinate, just feedback and tackling issues in the state of Alabama. We'll resend that as kind of a follow-up to our membership along with this video as well too. So please do let us know what's important to you. Let us know if you're interested in helping us, being part of this committee in a volunteering aspect or any kind of aspect. And we'd be glad to chat with you. Just also kind of help us guide on what Alabama advocacy can look like into the future. Like I said, we're a pretty small operation, so we'd be happy to receive inputs. I've been at this for 5 years, and I am by no means an expert. I am by no means a policy wonk. And so I am always looking for input, always looking for help on just how we can better make things more accessible and just edifying for our membership and for the students that we serve as well too. So I want to thank you for watching this video today. I want to thank you so much for all the work you do in your day-to-day at your job, as well as any work you do on the government side of things too, whether it be for advocacy or maybe you're even like a representative yourself. So thank you guys so much for joining us today, and we look forward to chatting with you in the future. If you're joining us at SACAC conference on March 30th to April 1st, we hope to see you there. We're glad to chat with you there as well too. And if for whatever reason well, not for whatever reason, if you're joining Alacro as well too in June, I'll be glad to chat with you there as well too. So really thank you guys so much for all you do today. And with that, we're going to go ahead and close our recording.